wants to give all of their workers the same rate, some that are in KiwiSaver, some that aren't. They can do that, that's fair enough. But secondly, let's understand this. The unions actually came to the Select Committee and they argued very strongly for a scheme exactly the same as ours, 2+2. Why? Because they knew that a vast bulk of New Zealanders would be able to get in. One important thing here actually, Mark, also, is this, that for a lot of New Zealanders, saving is very difficult. We're actually trying to bolt on top of New Zealand superannuation, something we're guaranteeing at age 65 and for 66% of the average wage, a KiwiSaver scheme they can have in their retirement. Let's get everybody in the scheme, not just the fortunate few who can afford to put in 4%.
John, let's be clear about who's misleading New Zealanders. The Labour government, in the last weeks of Parliament, legislated so that an employer couldn't dock wages to put in the employer contribution.
Right,
Mr Key voted against that. He's made it clear that a worker who wasn't in KiwiSaver would get a pay increase while the worker in KiwiSaver would not.
Well, the next question may be something you could both disagree on as well. It comes from London and it's from Adrian Parker.
Okay, my name's Adrian. Helen, John, when I left New Zealand about 3 years ago, I was paying 39 cents in the dollar. The government said I was rich. I didn't feel rich, but in the UK where I live now, I pay less. And in Australia, if I went back there, I'd pay less as well. So my question is, well, what are you going to do to level the playing field for income tax?
Helen Clark, what are you going to do?
Well, I understand that the top tax rate in Britain is higher than that in New Zealand, as is the top tax rate in Australia. But we have, to answer the question, specifically raised the threshold at which people go into the top tax rate. It raises to $70,000, I understand, from the 1st of October, which was a few days ago, and then it goes up to $80,000 at a later part of our tax package. So we're certainly taking on board that the threshold needs to be raised.
I mean, you didn't go as far as you planned on going on cutting the top tax rate.
We are cutting the top personal rate from 39% to 37%, and yes, we'd like to come down lower than that over time. Let's understand one thing about people who pay the top personal rate. A lot of them have been to university. We salute what they've done. Good on them. We want them in our economy. But 1 out of 4 New Zealanders that have been to university now live overseas. We're talking about the doctors, we're talking about the scientists, we're talking about all sorts of people we want in our economy. Helen Clark's government have scared those people off. In record numbers, they are leaving for overseas. And I say, let's not send those people overseas. Let's have those people working in our economy. The second thing Helen Clark said was in Australia the top rate is higher. That's actually true. 2 things. Let's have a competitive advantage here in New Zealand. And secondly, in Australia, where the top personal rate cuts in, it's hundreds of thousands higher. And actually, over time, by 2011, under Helen Clark's scheme, you'll have to earn $1.5 million before you start paying less tax in New Zealand than you pay in Australia.
Is this the time for tax cuts, Helen Clark?
We announced a package of tax cuts in May. It's a $10.6 billion package. It's phased in over the period from 1st of October through to 1st of April 2011. We stand by that package and we won't be changing it. But you know, a lot of people like John go overseas. They try their luck. A lot like John come home. I welcome people coming home, but I'm all in favour of young New Zealanders going and seeing the world, trying their luck, bringing back skills which are fantastic for us. And by the way, let's not write off the people who are living away. They're patriotic Kiwis. They help us. They're in networks that support other Kiwis trying to start up their businesses, expand their exports away. I think we've got to think of the whole Kiwi family, not just the 4.2 million of us here, but those who are, for some time, living away from us.
Were you pleased to see John Key come home?
I'm always pleased to see people come home. Always pleased to see people come home.
Listen, I want to go to our panel now and Guy.
Can I just make one point on taxes? Because there's an interesting thing here. Helen Clark's government took 25 days to raise taxes and 9 years to cut them. Today in Australia, they've announced a $10 billion plus package. What is Kevin Rudd doing for Australians? He's giving them a tax cut boost, like $1,000 or more at Christmas time. 7 of the last 9 years, the Australian cut taxes. And in New Zealand, we've had to wait 9 years and 5 weeks out for an election. That's why Lucas isn't coming back from overseas, because he doesn't feel his wages
And
will
you know,
actually
John,
benefit him.
if we'd cut taxes, imagine the state the government finances would be in now, as New Zealand, like the rest
Well,
of the
we're staring
world,
down a
has to
10-year
cope
we're staring
with the
down a
worst
decade of deficits
international
under your
financial
management.
crisis that we've ever been in.
We're staring
the
down a
National Party
decade of
would have
deficits
cut
under
taxes
this
and
management.
left us in a very, very difficult position, or they would have cut services. And I believe that deep down, Kiwis know if you want
That's
your
not
public
right,
health
Helen.
system and your public education system
That's not right,
and
Helen.
your super looked after, Labor will look after those things for you. We give you that commitment.
Would we be
right.
talking
Michael-
tax cuts if it wasn't an election?
Of course
in
we
Labor's
would,
case,
Mark,
wouldn't it, Mark?
because
Not
we
in
have
Labor's
always
case.
acknowledged that a time would come to do a general threshold change. But we'd already done very substantial tax relief for families. 70% of our families getting a lot of help from working for families. We'd already done tax relief for people in superannuation schemes. We'd already brought down the business tax rate. So we have a very good record on these
Mark,
things.
Can we afford them, John Key?
Helen Clark, well, can we afford not to have tax cuts? I mean, New Zealanders are out there today, they're struggling to pay their power bill. I mean, there was a news story just on Friday night. 1 in 5 New Zealanders now in default of a bill. A lot of New Zealanders watching this program tonight can't afford to meet a lot of their commitments. Helen Clark's government thought it was more important to have a huge surplus rather than for New Zealanders to keep a little bit more of their money. No finance minister in New Zealand's history has had more opportunity to cut taxes than Michael Cullen. He's chosen not to do that. And what's happened? Our economy hasn't faced the right incentives. Record numbers of New Zealanders have left. Our growth numbers have been low. They're the truth about
John cares so
statistics
much
here.
about the issues of the family living on the average wage that his package last week offered them $1.92 a week more than Labor. That's how much he cared, and took $40 a week off what was going into their KiwiSaver account.
That's not true,
And these are
Helen
our
can't
people.
do the maths on
These
that.
are our people
But Helen can't do
who
the maths on that
know
number,
that they were
actually.
putting money aside from their savings, working up to the not on their own 4%, but their employers' 4%. He has wrecked that for them, and even on the average wage, they wouldn't get the full benefit of the $20 a week personal tax credit, which Labor makes available to them
You're
under
arguing the
national
maths.
scheme.
So Helen cares so much about our economy, but she didn't mind that when she came into office, interest rates were roughly 6.5%, and under her leadership, she let them go to 10.5%. The average New Zealander watching this program has interest rates almost doubled under Labor's leadership. That is a huge commitment on their part. Their power bills have gone up 50% in the
And
last
their
5
real
years.
income,
But Helen
John,
Clark
as
hasn't
you
cared
know,
about
is
fixing
up by
that. Well, Helen, you
25%.
see, you don't
Their
actually
real
care
income,
about them.
John,
What
is
you
up
want to do is
25%.
have those surpluses to
and
spend
you know
on your
my
pet projects,
commitment
Helen.
and my
That's the
package
problem.
delivers
Okay.
to
I wanna
ordinary
bring-
Kiwis.
Well, it's-
Yours rewards
no.
the other side of town, John. You
Why
know
are-
that.
why are
you have no
81,000
limit
New
to what
Zealanders
people
leaving
on
to go
big
overseas, Helen?
incomes
Because they
can
don't like it.
get from your tax package.
We're still going to keep talking the economy. What do I mean? Guy and Espiner in here now, Guy.
Thanks, Mark. Well, John Key, we've seen Labor's plan for economic recovery. Beyond tax cuts, what is National's plan to lead us out of the economic crisis that we find ourselves in?
Well, firstly, let me just make the point that we agree with depositor protection. We agree with that. I advocated for that for last week. Actually, we were pretty much the last cab off the rank to get there, but we support the issue that New Zealanders can feel safe with their money in the bank. But the real issue here is about growth. Labor have a spending plan, they don't have a growth plan. That's why our productivity has been collapsing. Now, under National, we've got a number of things we're going to do. One, yes, we will cut taxes and put the right incentives in the economy. Yes, we will rein in the bureaucracy and the red tape that's absolutely strangling our economy. Yes, we will invest in infrastructure like ultra-fast broadband with fibre to the home. Yes, we will invest in those skills to get New Zealand going. There are an enormous number of initiatives that we're going to take. We'll have more initiatives to announce, but the most important thing here is you've got to get your fundamentals right. The reason why electricity prices have gone up 50%, the reason why interest rates have doubled under a Labor government is because inflation has been very high. And inflation has been high because the bottlenecks in our economy haven't been unclogged by a Labor government who haven't been focused on the job of economic growth.
It's hard to believe that John can say this with a straight face, because under
it's true, that's
Labor,
why.
growth has averaged over 3%. We have been one of the top growing economies in the OECD.
Well, why
we
have we
have
gone down
increased
in the OECD
Kiwis'
then?
real income by around 25%. We have got unemployment down to record low levels for modern times.
Will it stay there, Helen Clark?
Well, why I announced at our launch on Sunday that we were prepared to do a number of things like invest much more heavily in skills training and education, why we're prepared to bring infrastructure projects forward is so that if there is further fallout from the international financial crisis on our economy, we are prepared to move with job-rich projects.
Let me make a
That
point
is
today.
very, very important.
My
and